guys, this is Chauncey from Session Stories, and today I'm joined by the Sarandons, a band known for their rich dynamic sound and introspective storytelling. With their latest album, Drawing Dead, they explore themes of middle adulthood, embracing change, and finding meaning in life's uncertainties. Drawing Dead, recorded live off the floor, captures raw, authentic energy while balancing nostalgia with a sense of new beginnings. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Chauncey.
Yeah, cool. So diving into it, I did a bit of research on the album, and obviously I listened to it as well. But the album is described as existing between nostalgia and new beginnings. So my question to you is, how do you personally navigate, let's say, the push and pull between reminiscing but also evolving?
That's a good question. So, for us, we're a 5-piece, and these songs are, like all of our work, very much a collaborative effort. I guess I would say that I probably, as the singer, bring most of the words to the group. So a lot of that detail around nostalgia and looking forward is probably coming from me. So I'm the right person to ask. But kind of informed by the past, I certainly have a healthy sense of nostalgia personally. I look back a lot, but I think what we try to do in the music and what the Sarandons bring, certainly in the musical component, is balance out that with some optimism, kind of hear that melodically. So although, there's a looking back, it's not that the future is somehow bleak. It's just, acknowledging kind of that past and how it's shaping our future. I went through a couple of, things personally, separation over the last couple of years, lost my father as well. And, sort of gone into thinking about my time growing up and sort of my time in some relationships.
Yeah. I know that this album, compared to your previous album, Sightlines, it's considered a bit, I read it says it's rougher around the edges, or rough edges, let's say, this is what it says. And it is deliberately more simplistic compared to your previous album. How did you guys approach the arranging and production from this album, and how did it differ from your previous album?
We changed producers. So, we moved from Dan Hosch, who produced Sightlines and who had produced our previous EP, Outrunning, to Will Cran. Will had we got to know Will. He mixed a lot of stuff for us, a couple of singles that we did kind of in between, called Say When and The Great Divide. And we got to talking about his approach. And it's been something that I think we've always liked as an aesthetic. I don't know, very simplistic bands like White Stripes, for example. When you have just 2 or 3 instruments in the mix, a voice, a guitar, and drums, everything has its own space and can actually sound bigger and more powerful. And when you start adding layer upon layer, and you have, instead of just 5 instruments, you may double a guitar or triple guitar track or double vocal tracks. We find it sort of maybe takes away from the impact of some of those elements. So not to say we ended up with a austere kind of number of tracks on this record. There was still, it always adds up, but we did deliberately try to cut it down. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm sure there's maybe half as many tracks roughly on this record per song as there was on the previous. And it's a little bit counter to modern production, which probably, now that we're all working with, digital, media workstations, it's infinite in terms of possibilities, but just always trying to be mindful, even though we have infinite tracks, to sort of say, well, even though we've got a track of banjo, does it need to be in the song or not?
Yeah.
Does every element need to be in every section? Can we approach a second verse with just drums? And you'll start to hear on songs like, Telling Me Nothing, which is the opener on side 2 of the record. I always think of the vinyl as like a 5 and 5, but I guess, it's song 6 out of 10. It's very stripped down. There's a few layers on the vocals, but what you hear is what you get in terms of the sort of 5 of us in the room playing that.
Yeah. And then there were 2 songs on the album in particular. Well, I actually like the entire album, but there's 2 songs that I really wanted to maybe deep dive into a bit more. One of which is my favorite, is Dream Machine. So Dream Machine features this upbeat refrain with the line, I wrote it down, "Don't dream at all." So what message exactly were you aiming to convey with this juxtaposition?
I was thinking about my dad in that one. So the story with my dad is he just passed away at 77 in 2021, but he had a really serious diving accident when he was 38. And he broke his neck. He lived the rest of his life disabled in a wheelchair. But when he would dream, he would still dream of himself, even till he was 77 as able-bodied. And so it was this kind of interesting escape for him. He had a rich life and, et cetera. But certainly, he appreciated those moments when, he would have those dreams. So I just got thinking about that sort of internal dream life and that we carry with us and how we see ourselves in our dreams. It's often we don't age. If we do have a sense of who we are, in my dad's case, he always remained able to walk. Also just thinking about other people that I've lost and, who you can still, like my mother I'd lost much earlier in life, but, I'll still have the odd dream where I connect with her and she's in that dream and those connections, right? That, she's gone, he's gone. You see them once in a while in your dreams and they live in that context within us, within that dream world until I go, right? And then I guess that's where the, don't dream at all. That's just sort of the, when the dreamer passes away, I guess depends what you believe. The reality is the reality, whatever we believe, but, it could be kind of the Shakespeare line, perchance to dream, Hamlet or something like that, whether there is anything beyond. And if there isn't, then that kind of really closes a chapter on that person's existence. That's kind of what I was drawing from in that song. It has some of that space that I think we were just talking about in terms of a more stripped back production. I love it. I musically, I really like the way those verses came together. It's kind of highlight, like sonically for me on the record, I like verse 1 and verse 2 in Dream Machine as a sonic sort of point in the album.
And the other song that I have is actually the top of the fourth.
Oh yeah.
So, I think it subtly depicts maybe a bit of an emotional outburst at a baseball game or at some type of game. So can you maybe share the story behind that song?
Yeah, definitely. In my mind, it's a fictional road trip that I'm taking with my son. Probably have to take it now. I was a huge Paul Simon fan. Love Graceland as an album. I love Graceland as a song. I think it's one of the best songs around. And, that's the story of Paul Simon and his son on a road trip to go see Graceland, Elvis's house. It skips between the physical trip, which I'm not sure they actually took, but maybe they did, and the sort of more of a metaphor. Graceland is a metaphor. So here we have kind of quintessential father-son baseball road trip, very North America and an all-American theme, if you will. And we're up here in Toronto. So in our division, we have a baseball team, the Blue Jays. In our division, we have the Toronto Blue Jays, Boston Red Sox, and the Baltimore Orioles, as well as the New York Yankees and the Tampa Bay Rays. So that's our division. So I was thinking of a road trip. It would be down to see the Jays playing Baltimore, from Boston to Baltimore, make that trip, and then circle back. In the end, it's talking about Fenway and Camden Yards, which are the baseball stadiums for Boston and for Baltimore. Talk about kind of the trip back and just kind of how chilled out that would be as the sort of sun was going down. It's a long drive, but, young kids probably just passed out by that point. Interspersed in there is a story of a rookie who's, having their first game, and in their first kind of taste of the big leagues, they kind of make a bit of a mistake and get picked off first base in a rundown. You can imagine that person's family's there, etc. And I'm in the stands, and it affects me more than it should. So I'm kind of, brought to tears by this moment for this player, but it's more because of everything else that's going on in my life, in my relationship. And that's what that song is about. It's our longest song on the record. We knew the second we had it that it was going to be the closing song on the record, just because the feeling of it. It's a nice closer. It's longer. Yeah. So cool. Glad you like that one.
And one thing I like about your songwriting is that it often touches on everyday life, but yet you still manage to find depth in these moments. And do you think meaning is something we impose on life, or it's inherently there waiting to be discovered?
A little philosophical question. I think perhaps it's more imposed. In that situation, in my mind, I'm a spectator, and a situation is impacting me not because it's inherently sad. It's just because I'm connecting with it in a certain way. Especially when I think about that song, I try to write matter of factly, pretty plainly, but not at a level of minutia that might turn people off because it's too detailed and you just can't relate. Yeah. But at a level where enough detail to understand, there's clearly a story here or something is happening. It's clearly authentic, but exactly. Not killing people with the details necessarily, so that people can anchor their own stories. So in a way, kind of explaining what I take from a song, and that this even within the band, we'll talk about this say, hey, Dave, like, what were you, what is this about? What are you thinking here? And also, like, well, what, like, you've been playing it for the last 6 months. Like, what do you think it's about? And it's about something for them. And for me, it's about something different. That's kind of how I write. I have a bunch of words and sentences and maybe imagery that I piece together in my mind. And I hope that others kind of can create their own, probably like thematically like related, that it's enough there for people to draw on and inspire reflection on your own life or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was the creative process like in the studio for this album? Because I know there's a few of you in the band. So did everything kind of come together smoothly? Were there any creative, maybe disagreements, or was it just smooth sailing for the most part?
So the process was usually Craig, who's a lead guitar, Craig Keeney, or myself coming in with, fairly fleshed out ideas. And some of these songs, like Shouldn't I, would be a good example. We had recorded it for Sightlines. We just didn't get it into a place where we wanted it. So that would be something that was like an older song that we pulled through. Everything else would have been written between Sightlines, probably in the last year and a half. And, practice those songs, work them into shape, and then ultimately try to capture as much as possible live off the floor. Of course, there were still overdubs. It's modern music, and there's still editing, but most of that is kind of a live off the floor approach. And there weren't major struggles. I think maybe where we struggled the most was with the drums and just trying to make sure that they were a backbone for the songs. And so sometimes with drums, it's hard to sort of say, hey, this song needs a steady kind of backbeat and maybe not all the flourishes and all the interesting drum beats that we could think of. Like, it needs something a little bit more explicit because we want to highlight some of the other elements in the song rhythmically or sonically. So maybe if there was any tension, it was just around simplification, in particular around the drums, but maybe for us all. Like, I know that's kind of been a common input from our producers over the years, has been, hey, 5 guys doing cool things, but we need to simplify. Like, one person doing something interesting at a time. Sometimes everybody playing a little simpler to serve the song. We have a great time together. We've been together for 6-7 years as the Sarandons and friends long before that. So, these relationships are long-standing. We've been through a lot, and it was a joy to make. Like, we're kind of hitting our stride, it feels like, in terms of finding our sound and figuring out, we now know how we should approach songs and arrange songs. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So more of a fun question, not a philosophical one, but let's say that you were a headliner for a festival of your choice, maybe like your dream festival. Who would you choose as like your lineup? Or the artist to accompany you if you were able to select the lineup?
I would say Kurt Vile would be somebody who would be really cool to play with. I've seen him once. It was just announced we're going to be playing the Ottawa Blues Fest. And so we're not on the same night as Kurt Vile, but we're in the same festival. We're getting closer. We're certainly not headlining, but so I'd say Kurt Vile, and then the War on Drugs. I guess Kurt is an offshoot from the War on Drugs anyway. So those guys, Wilco, we love Wilco, and I would love to play with Spoon. I think if you were going to see like Spoon, Wilco, Kurt Vile, War on Drugs, and the Sarandons, maybe the Sarandons at that point are probably not necessary to a phenomenal night of music. There's some older artists as well, but like Dylan and Neil Young, who it would be phenomenal to play alongside those people. But just trying to be realistic here.
Yeah. So if the version of the Sarandons that made the first record could give advice to the band today, what do you think they'd say? Or I guess since you're here, what would you say?
What would I say? Wow, because I feel like I'd want to do it the other way. I'd want to be like today giving advice back.
Or okay, let's do this then. Let's say today giving advice to you then.
Yeah, it would be just patience. Keep patient with it. We're just treading on music. We're not selling anything else, as you can see. Just pretty plain. Middle-aged people trying to make really good music. Reasonable expectations for that first record and second record and third record, and continue to stay very humble in terms of your expectations and be pleasantly surprised. We want to be, an overnight success, like 10 years in the making. That's kind of what we're looking to be. Have fun with it. Make sure there's some lightness in all the music.
And a bit of a fun question. So let's say you were to wake up tomorrow and the Sarandons had swapped with a completely different genre. Like completely different genre, completely different sound. What's the wildest version of the Sarandons that could exist? Like what would that other alternative be?
I could see us seamlessly becoming a country band. You're not new country, but, very twangy country. We have a lot of songs that we left on the cutting room floor for this record because they were just very country. And I think we might do it. We may do an EP at some point that's just we pool them all together and we just get it out of our system, or just scratch that itch and just go lean into it and get real country. But it would be, I don't know, like Willie Nelson or, Dolly Parton. Like, it would just be much, much more than the current country stuff. So that would be like easy. If I had my way and was going to do like a side project, I'd love to get, into kind of more 80s, stripped down 80s kind of synth stuff. That would be kind of fun to explore.
Yeah. So what's next on the docket for you guys? Will you be touring? What's happening there for this year?
We're recording another album next weekend. We start.
Wow. Okay.
So we're right into it. We've got it written already. So don't know what it's going to be called yet. We're going to do maybe an EP, it may be a full album. We're at about 7 or 8 songs, so we'll see. And then the summer, a couple of festivals. One that we've announced, the Ottawa Blues Fest. Another we'll announce in a little while. Some others that are probably going to come through. So 4 or 5 kind of major Canadian music festivals. That's going to be our plan. And then in 2026, I know it's a long way away, but that's when we have circled to get to Germany and do a run of club shows. Also get out through the US.
Yeah, very cool. And will this new album also kind of like stay in par with the Americana type themes, or are you moving away from something different?
It's going to be, I think if you took this last record and you took songs like Drawing Dead and These Hearts and Telling Me Nothing, like those kind of songs, that would be the jumping off point for where we're going. I think it's overall maybe a little bit more up tempo. Like, we're just continuing to try to create songs that are kind of songs that I would want to listen to, the kind of songs that I put on in my car when I'm driving around, or in my headphones when I'm walking, or out on a run or something like that. The type of song that makes you want to, once you, not too long, 3 minutes, 3:30, you finish it and then you just play it again. That kind of a song.
Yeah. And I meant to ask this question actually earlier, but what's your favorite song on the album? And maybe you can give a backstory as to why. I
guess I'm most proud of Drawing Dead. It was the last song that we wrote for the record. So to me, it represents the best version of a lot of things we were trying to do on the record with, trying to be, that's me trying to be pretty open and vulnerable, lyrically, hooky, hopefully, melodically, and, just kind of very live feeling in terms of the sonic qualities of the song. That song, I should mention this, and it's something that we don't talk about a lot, but a lot of the songs in this album actually had some input from a Canadian mega producer, this guy Bob Rock, who produced big stuff like Metallica and one of the greatest Tragically Hip albums, tons of other stuff. And we would very informally kind of got to know him, and he's willing to kind of be a sounding board for these songs as we develop them. And I remember on Drawing Dead, when I sent through kind of the idea to sketch the demo, his input was, hey, like, let's remember that this is pop music and repetition is key. So let's double up the length on those choruses. So we ended up with a song that, just in terms of the, we're indie rock, but it's all kind of pop music. There's some element of who's getting who here, where you want the music to resonate and be popular with your audience. I feel like that song really does the trick. And if I was to pick like a 1B, These Hearts, song that Craig brought in, and I'm proud of that one because we did a nice acoustic song. Like, it's an acoustic based song. We said we wanted to do at least one on this record. I think we did it well, and it just has a nice feel, just like warm, and I'm attracted to both of those songs, like lyrically, but also sonically. Yeah, just kind of proud. I feel proud of most proud of those songs.
And ultimately, what do you hope listeners take away from listening to the album? Is there a certain feeling that you hope they take away? Maybe a certain message?
I'd like it to work, hopefully, on a couple of levels, where it's a great, it's evocative, and it provides a somewhat textured, background to your own life. So I'm hoping that it fits into people's lives. Not looking to convey any specific messages. Really looking to just, if anything, catalyze people's own thinking and people's own feelings. It depends who you are. For me, I listen to a song for the first time, I'm very much, listening, following along with the lyrics and the themes of the song. But by the time I listen to it the fifth time, it's just more about the music. And I've sort of already internalized the lyrics and the feeling that I'm getting from it. So I hope it, nothing specific. I hope people find it, useful and find that it has a place in their life. And I think, we see more and more, you can kind of see the data on your songs in a very stark way on Spotify or Apple Music and the sort of back ends of those systems. And it looks like people are really gravitating towards songs like Trying Dead. Not huge numbers in the grand scheme of things, but we're up to something like 60,000 monthly listeners, which is a great new high for us. And keep trying to build, and who knows, with some luck, maybe after the next record or EP, that's 100,000. And it's a very global audience for us. So thank you for Germany's support. We worked with a great publicist there in Germany, Pop Up Records, and they helped with our radio campaign and everything like that. And no doubt part of the reason why we're talking. Germany, US, Canada, Australia, UK, France. These are kind of our key markets.
Yeah, that's how I actually discovered you. It was on my Discover Weekly, but it was actually your older stuff. And I was a massive fan, but that's how I found it, was through the Discover Weekly.
There's songs like Sightlines and etc. Our Headlights in the Day from Sightlines is another fun tune, a little darker, but it's great to see. I mean, Spotify, say what you will about the company, it is cool that they do somehow, through whether it's AI or people or whatever, certainly push out interesting tracks as well that maybe we didn't think to promote, that seem to be grabbing people. And that's great to hear that's what connected with you.
Yeah, I'm surprised actually I wasn't targeted with the new album, but no, it was definitely the older stuff. Yeah. So just to wrap it up, do you have any final words for the listeners and your fans?
Thank you. It would be the big final word is thank you so much for all the support. We are certainly going to hold up our end of the bargain and keep making, I think, hopefully interesting, high quality music. We are always writing. So, it's a matter of just trying to curate what we have and try to only release the best of the best. And we hope to be through Germany next year. And we would appreciate, the support in whatever towns we come through.
Very cool. Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate you joining today. Living
it up, all up in the clouds, worn out.